it's such a blessing to be really incapable and
Yeah.
unqualified and not up to the task because we get to watch God work.
Let's do kind of a recap of the year. And I will tell you that we have a really big and really, really exciting announcement coming up this week. I am so excited to tell you guys about this, but you're going to have to wait to hear about it. I know.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Ahead.
Can we go back to something we said during the sponsor announcement? Because I actually am the producer of the show. And so a lot of those, requests to advertise products and stuff come in to me. We both see them. They come to our email, but I'm the one who usually responds to them. The other thing we get, though, that I want to talk about with our listeners is we get a ton, and this does happen every week, sometimes several times a week. We get a ton of requests to cover like new products and books and authors that want to be interviewed and things like that. And it's a double-edged sword. On one side, it's a real blessing because we're not in a position now where we have to go out and seek out every guest,
Right.
which is a huge blessing. We get really great guests. As you guys know, God blesses this show with the best guests. And we'll talk about some of those this week. But God has just blessed us so well. But I want you as listeners to understand how seriously we take this and to understand a little bit of our process behind the scenes. We will get requests from authors all across the spectrum, and usually there's some education-oriented product. Well, education-oriented doesn't necessarily meet the needs of you, our listeners. And so we go through a really careful screening process. We actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but we have all of our guests sign a statement of faith and fill out kind of a preliminary screening form so we can know what their worldview is, know what they believe about homeschooling. And in the now 5 years we've been doing this podcast, I think we've only ever recorded one episode that we threw away.
Yeah.
And this was what prompted us to do this pre-screening of our guests. It was probably in the second or third season.
Yeah, I think it was the second season.
And we had a guest come on who we trusted the source who recommended the guest, but the guest's worldview just did not fit with the podcast. And so we had to say, you know what, we're not going to do this show. And thankfully, by God's grace, we had technical problems with the show.
I forgot to push record. Like legitimately, I forgot to press record. And at the end of that, I was like, oh no. And then I was like, oh, praise God, I didn't push record. So we couldn't air it anyway.
So that one went away, but we learned really quickly to pre-screen our guests. And we do that because we are you. We are our audience.
Right.
Yvette is a homeschool mom. She is a Christian woman who cares about discipling the hearts of our kids. And I'm a homeschool dad who cares about discipling the hearts of my kids towards Christ. And so to do that appropriately and to feed you guys in the same way, we have to be careful who we bring on. So I'll tell you that it's a very, very high bar that we set, and we really care. And God blesses that. As you guys know who listen, I mean, I'm tempted to list people, but the list would be so long it would go on for days. So I just wanted to step back. I'm sorry to interrupt the host.
No. You're the producer.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that too is oftentimes, and this happens so many times, where I will record an episode and you will always ask me afterwards, how did it go? And sometimes I'll say, man, I really like that guest, but I don't feel like it went very well. And often those will end up being the best episodes. And we'll get responses from people saying, that episode was so good and it really impacted me. And I'm like, okay, praise God. Because then it's just all the Lord. It's not anything I'm doing. It's not anything the guest is doing. It's just watching God's hand at work, because I feel so inadequate sometimes in my ability. And I'm just like, I don't know. I think it was good, but I don't know. And then it ends up being a really good one.
Yeah.
So
those are the ones where we'll talk after the episode. I always ask. And then several weeks later, I'll end up in the editing room, editing that episode. And I'm in the back going, oh, praise God. Yes, yes. and I just get so excited as I know what we're going to be able to bring you in the coming week. And it's such a pleasure. I think we restated this with the movie over and over and over, but it's such a blessing to be really incapable and unqualified and not up to the task, because we get to watch God work.
Right.
And God does such big things through such incapable people.
Right.
And the only thing that it qualifies us for this task,
Mhm.
the only thing is that we are willing to do what God calls us to do.
Yeah.
And so as parents, this should be a huge encouragement to you because we know how hard the task is that you've been called to.